From the president this morning, as he marks 500 days in office, he claims that he has the, quote, absolute right to pardon himself. He goes on to write, but why would I when I have done nothing wrong? This comes after a weekend of extraordinary disclosures, debates, and admissions about presidential powers versus the power of the special counsel. Let's go to the White House. Let's begin our coverage with Caitlin Collins, who joins us there. This just came moments ago from the president. What else can you tell us?
I mean, a stunning statement here, Poppy, from the president openly declaring that he believes he is above the law. The president here saying that he is quoting numerous legal scholars. He doesn't say which ones. And then he says, I have the absolute right to pardon myself. But then he adds the caveat, why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong? Then he goes on to say, in the meantime, the never-ending witch hunt led by 13 angry and conflicted Democrats, Robert Mueller is a Republican, and others continues into the midterms. So the president there declaring that he has the power to pardon himself if he does so choose. That argument that was being made by his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, yesterday in several interviews, one where Giuliani stated very clearly what their thinking on this is when he said essentially that the president could shoot the former FBI director James Comey if he wanted to. Rudy Giuliani told the Huffington Post if he shot James Comey, he'd be impeached the next day. Impeach him, and then you can do whatever you want to do to him. So Giuliani making the argument there that while the president is the president, he would be above the law if he did something as serious as shoot the former FBI director. But then once he was impeached, then he could get in trouble for shooting James Comey. Quite an unusual comment for Rudy Giuliani to make, but that came on the same day as he was making these arguments about the president's sweeping constitutional powers and what the president's legal team sees this as. Now, Poppy, this is something we have long suspected is the thinking of the president and his legal team, but here we are now hearing it just out in plain language from the president himself.
And you asked Kellyanne Conway, the advisor and senior counsel to the president, about this. Point blank, why does the president think he's above the law? What did she just tell you?
Yeah, we saw Kellyanne out here on the north lawn of the driveway just minutes after the president made this stunning statement on Twitter. And I asked her, why does the president believe that he is above the law? And he's the chief law enforcement agency in the United States. But she said, excuse me, she said that the president, she asked why he would need to pardon himself if he hasn't done anything wrong. That is certainly the question people were asking yesterday after Rudy Giuliani was making the argument that he could. But Kellyanne Conway said this was simply an exercise in hypotheticals, did not allude any more to why the president would make a statement like he just did about how he believes he has the power to pardon himself here, Poppy.
Caitlin Collins, thank you very much from the White House this morning. So also what we saw and read and what was disclosed over the weekend is this 20-page letter from the president's lawyers to Bob Mueller's team. It was sent back in January, but for the first time we're able to read it. And there's a really important part of it that shows dishonesty. It says that the president dictated, not just weighed in on, but dictated the initial untruthful response to that Don Jr. meeting and Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort meeting in Trump Tower with that Russian lawyer. Our Shimon Porcupez has that. Good morning, Shimon.
Hey, Poppy, that's right. And that meeting, of course, was set up on the belief that a Russian lawyer was going to provide dirt on Hillary Clinton. The controversy surrounding the purpose of the meeting, and more importantly, really, the initial lies that the president and the Don Jr. made in statements to the media claiming that the meeting was about adoptions. And as you said, for the first time in this 20-page letter, the president's lawyers admit that he, the president, dictated one of those misleading statements despite repeated denials from the White House and his lawyer. Now, Giuliani yesterday sort of blaming it on poor recollection, saying that this is why, one of the reasons why he doesn't want the president talking to Mueller about this issue. Take a listen.
I mean, this is the reason you don't let the president testify. If, you know, our recollection keeps changing, or we're not even asked a question, and somebody makes an assumption. In my case, I made an assumption. Then we corrected it, and I got it right out as soon as it happened. I think that's what happened here.
And you know, Poppy, despite that argument and the sort of claims of poor recollection, we counted several instances from the president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, and of course, the White House, Sarah Sanders, denying the president dictated the statement. And here's that.
He certainly didn't dictate, but, you know, he, like I said, he weighed in, offered suggestion like any father would do.
I wasn't involved in the statement drafting at all. nor was the president. The president didn't sign off on anything. But I do want to be clear that the president was not involved in the drafting of the statement and did not issue the statement. It came from Donald Trump Jr.
And really, Poppy, the president's lawyers in this letter to Mueller, who wants to ask, Mueller's team, they want to ask Trump about that statement and the statement, the lawyers here are claiming, the president's lawyers here are claiming that this is a private matter and not something that the special counsel has a right to investigate.
Shimon, thank you for the reporting. Let's discuss all of this because there is a lot to get through this morning. Steve Vladeck is with us, professor at the University of Texas School of Law, and CNN legal analyst Paul Callan. Gentlemen, nice to have you here, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Paul, let me begin with you and the president's claim that legally he has the absolute right to pardon himself. Does he?
I'm not buying that. Under Article 1, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the way the Founding Fathers set it up is they talk first about impeachment, but they clearly then follow with the concept that a president can be prosecuted under the Constitution. And of course, there's no mention anywhere in the Constitution that the president has the right to pardon himself. So I just don't think that that's a legitimate claim.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul's probably right. Practically, though, I think whether the president can pardon himself or not may not ultimately matter, because if we ever got that far, the one thing Rudy Giuliani said yesterday that I completely agree with is that would be the moment at which you would really have to look at Congress for pursuing impeachment proceedings. I mean, any president who thinks he has the power to pardon himself, whether he's right or not, Poppy, that's the point at which the Constitution creates a clear mechanism for the president's removal.
Kellyanne Conway just said to our Caitlin Collins, you guys, the media likes to bring up all these hypotheticals when Caitlin asked point blank, why does the president think he's above the law? The reason the pardon conversation started again over the weekend is because it is mentioned by the president's lawyers in that 20-page letter to Mueller's team. They bring it up. And then Giuliani is talking about it and asked about it over and over again yesterday. So I'm just sort of confounded that Kellyanne Conway thinks this is hypotheticals when their team brought it up. I want you both to listen to, a man who's a big supporter of President Trump, former New Jersey governor, Chris Christie, also a prosecutor. Here's what he said when he was asked yesterday, about obstruction and whether the president is above the law.
It's an outrageous claim. It's wrong. They were trying to make a broad argument. Lawyers do that all the time.
That's significant, Paul, that he said it's an outrageous claim and there's just no legal basis.
Yeah, and it's bizarre, as you've just observed also, that they constantly raise this idea that the president can't be prosecuted for obstruction of justice. Of course he can, if the obstruction is an obstruction with corrupt intent. In other words, if he's obstructing the investigation of himself, he's not immune from the law. And then for the president, through his lawyers, to throw out the fact that, hey, don't bother prosecuting me because I'm going to pardon myself. I mean, try to picture an ordinary criminal who committed a crime saying that. I can do whatever I want, and by the way, I'll pardon myself. You sound like you're guilty when you say that.
By the way, Steve, there is an outrageous hypothetical that was thrown out there by the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in an interview last night to the Huffington Post, and let me read you the quote. He said, if he, the president, shot James Comey, he'd be impeached the next day. Impeach him, and then you can do whatever you want to him. He was saying, look, even if the president shot someone, and he chose James Comey, we know the president doesn't have much care for, he still couldn't be prosecuted. Any legal basis in that?
Well, Poppy, as you know, there are these conflicting legal analyses, one by the Justice Department and one by Ken Starr back when he was the independent counsel investigating Bill Clinton, about whether a sitting president can or cannot be indicted. It's an open question, but I think it's important that we step back for a second. I mean, the purpose of these letters that we discovered, that we learned about over the weekend, was basically the president's legal team telling the special counsel, we don't have to comply with your investigation. We don't have to meet with you on your terms because we have all of these greater powers. Basically, the greater includes the lesser. And Poppy, there's a basic flaw there, which is even if the president's right that he has these extraordinary powers, and I think Paul is quite persuasive that in many cases he's not, he hasn't exercised them. And so until and unless he does, why they think they can threaten the special counsel and try to basically bully him into not sitting down with the president, I think is really the big perspective here.
Which seems, it's one thing and notably different for them to sort of bully the special counsel in the court of public opinion on cable news, for the president's surrogates to do that. It's another thing for the lawyers to do it in that letter directly to Mueller, which is what they did. Guys, talking about Mueller, the president just wrote this, quote, "The appointment of the special counsel is totally unconstitutional, despite that we play the game because I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong." Paul Callan, is the appointment of the special counsel unconstitutional?
No, it's totally constitutional, and I wish he would learn how to spell the word counsel. He misspells counsel in that tweet, something that's such a focus of his life. You know, a president who's claiming that he has no right to be investigated, that he would pardon himself if convicted, that he can commit an obstruction of justice, that's a president who doesn't understand politics or the law, because it's bad politics and bad law to claim such things.
Steve, remind us why the appointment of the special counsel, Bob Mueller, is constitutional.
Sure. I mean, so the special counsel was appointed consistent with both the existing statutes governing the Justice Department and with regulations issued by the Attorney General under the president's name. You know, Poppy, there's already been one court challenge to special counsel Mueller's appointment by Paul Manafort. That was rejected by a D.C. federal judge, Amy Berman Jackson, in a 37-page opinion last month. So, you know, this argument is out there, I think, among really far-right conservative legal thinkers. It's really not much of an argument. It's one the courts have already considered, and it's one they've already rejected.
The fact that clearly the president's team lied about who dictated that initial statement about the Trump Tower meeting, Paul Callan.
Well,
it's not illegal to lie to the public, but lying to the public was included in the articles of impeachment against Nixon and against President Clinton. So legally, how does that shake out?
Well, you know, I'm not sure, first of all, who's responsible for the lie. The president could very well be responsible for the lie and could have communicated this to his legal team. And I will say, as a lawyer, I would never go out on a limb and make a statement that was made, say, by Sekulow about, and that was an explicit statement that the president had nothing to do with dictating this. Now, a lawyer would go back and speak to the client and say, listen, I'm going to make this statement on your behalf. So I think clearly the president was involved in that. And is it relevant? Yes, it's highly relevant. And indictments in the past for cover-ups and obstruction of justice, frequently the public position that is articulated is used in the prosecution to show that there was a propensity to lie, to try to obstruct an investigation. So this could backfire on the president.
Quickly, Steve, on that point.
Yeah, I mean, it could backfire. I think, Poppy, the million-dollar question here, and I think the thing that we really have to talk more about, is where is Congress and where are congressional Republicans? Because at the end of the day, the Constitution is pretty clear that many of the powers the president now claims he can abuse are supposed to be reined in not by the courts, but by Congress through the power of impeachment.